Hello and good evening. I'm Brian Easton, the author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series, and your host for Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's nice of you to come by, and I think we've got a good show for you tonight. This is Von Payne Black. This is a blended whiskey, which means that they take different kinds of whiskey and blend them together. Usually they'll take a higher end whiskey, maybe a single malt, and mix it in with some of the cheap stuff to keep the costs down. And then they can add flavors to it, or different ingredients. This one is actually, it has black currant added to it, which gives it, it's kind of a black, really dark berry anyway, color. Now, this is a local product. The only place that I was able to find this was online at caskcartel.com. As you can see, the bottle has this really neat gargoyle stopper and spout on it. So let's see if the creature inside measures up to the coolness of its bottle. And you can see it actually pours directly from the gargoyle's mouth, which is pretty cool. To Amanda Rogers, who recommended this whiskey. So this is obviously not the first time that I've tried this. I had to try it the minute that it came in, but it's not at all bad for a blended whiskey, for a flavored blended whiskey. The black currant really, though, gives it a deep brandy flavor, which is why I chose to use the snifter tonight instead of the usual glasses that I use. But all told, the bottle is definitely the coolest part of this creature. But like I said, the whiskey is tasty enough that it won't become just another shelf display piece. Well, when she's not recommending whiskeys, she's asking some damn good questions. And so here she is with another one, and another installment of Amanda Asks.
Hi Brian, hi internet people. Let's get right to it today. Spoilers, book 1. I was wondering, what did Jason Monroe do to tick the werewolves off, or the Black Wetworks guys, whatever, so badly that not only does a werewolf show up, kill him, tear him all to bits in front of his dad, make it a big deal to transform in front of his dad, but then also to come back with the intention to kill both father and mother. Now, I get the satanic angle. You're going to say, okay, he's into satanic stuff, that's a thing. But as I understand it, that's a teenage thing. They all go through that kind of phase. I get the drug angle, but I know very few drug people, dealers, meth addicts, whatever, that tick off werewolves that badly. So, what's the backstory there? That feels like it should have some more detail in it. Is it that he got in where the werewolves were transforming and he saw something? Is it the Satanic Wetworks group? What are they? The Black Cross? Were they involved in the stuff he was getting involved in? Did he not pay somebody on time? What's the story there? That's what I'm wondering. You tell me what you're wondering about.
Okay, so we go all the way back to the first book for this question, to a cheap hotel room where Sylvester is sitting on the bed about to blow his head off, and the TV news is on, but the volume is down, and he sees over the set a crime scene that kind of raises his hackles, and it kind of brings him back from his suicide and interrupts those plans. a werewolf, which he senses, has slaughtered this 17-year-old boy in Louisville, Kentucky. And his name is Jason Monroe, and this werewolf has spread him all over his room. And when Logan arrives at the scene, he asks himself the same question that Amanda does. What's going on here that has brought down the wrath so violently on this family? Well, it's been a minute since I've written this story, but as I recall, when I was writing it, there was a backstory in there in the original version that didn't make the cut when it was edited for publication. And the backstory basically consisted of something like that Christy Monroe, who was Jason's mother and wife to Kevin Monroe, had been bitten by a werewolf. She'd been marked and hadn't transformed yet, but was having some problems still dealing with what was going on inside of her and with her family. So along comes the Louisville Wolf, as he becomes known in the book, to take care of that problem for her. He kills a son, and then later, in the original story, he killed the husband too, and it had a whole different ending. So when it went to print, like I said, in the very first time when I self-published, I left all that out of it, and even with those details out, the story doesn't make much sense that way. But I did leave it open to interpretation, which is why I had Sylvester kind of wonder to himself, you know, what brought this on. And I like to do that from time to time. But most of all, I just decided to let the Louisville Wolf's audacious violence just kind of come through as a thing of its own. Naked aggression that they can kill with impunity. And if you've read the book, well, you know what happens at the end of that story, which just wouldn't have made any sense with Christy as the werewolf. Well, in keeping with the theme for this month's episode, we're going to text Grebner to take a look at a weapon that is about as classic as they come. Here's your June segment for Tools of the Trade.
When I go back and I watch the original Universal Monsters, I can't tell if I'm watching a horror movie or a gallows comedy. Because in the original Wolfman, there is a silver snarling wolf head on a shillelagh that is used to beat werewolves to death. At least in the 2010 remake and the novelization, there is a sword cane. Now, on this episode of Tools of the Trade, we aren't going to be talking about something that is used within the autobiography of a werewolf hunter universe. We're going to be talking about the sword cane. We know that silver doesn't make good edged weapons. However, the reason that the throwing knives theoretically work is because they are a glorified shiv. They go in, they do damage as a ranged weapon. This is also a glorified shiv. And you can also use a silver rod in your sword cane as long as it has a wicked point on it. It comes up. My palm is facing up. Comes out, and I'm already preloaded for a stunning stroke to be followed by a thrust. Now, the stunning stroke would be useless against a werewolf, but while I'm not a martial arts instructor, common sense dictates you would draw a sword cane like this. Even if we did have a silver rod in our sword cane, this is still going to be very anemic, which means that we want to find the off switch quick, meaning the head. But not just the head, because the skull is still difficult to penetrate. So, finding the brain through an eye socket. Attack the beauty. Thanks for watching Tools of the Trade.
Thanks, Tex, for that impressive targeted thrust there, right in the eye. That's kind of hard to do. As Tex pointed out, it was this cane that was used in the original Wolfman and used as a bludgeoning weapon. So this was like supposed to be solid silver and was used to crack the skull of first as Bela Lugosi as the werewolf, and then Lon Chaney Jr. But this is the forerunner of the sword cane, which makes a cameo or a small appearance, let's say, in the 2010 Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. Now, it had a much smaller role than this cane did, but there's an interesting detail about that. There was a scene that was cut from the theatrical release of 2010's Wolfman, which had a scene between Benicio del Toro and the great and uncredited in this film, Max von Sydow. Now, they're on a train, and Lawrence is on his way to Blackmore, to his family estate, Talbot Hall, because his brother is missing, and we'll soon find out that he's dead. But while they're on the train, Max von Sydow is this distinguished-looking, gentlemanly character, and he makes a gift of his walking stick to Talbot. Talbot kind of refuses it, and the old man tells him, it's become too heavy for him nowadays, that he's getting older, and he says that he picked up the cane in Gévaudan, which at least implies that Max von Sydow's character in this scene was, or perhaps still is, the beast of Gévaudan. And if you don't know what that is, well, that's why God made Google. You can watch that deleted scene on the extended version on the DVD. And Tex tells me that the novelization of that movie was quite good, so there may be some more of the cane in that. Anyway, that's my dust-up, which will bring us to Thom Brannan. Now, Thom, if you'll remember, is not only a contributor to the Legends of the Werewolf Hunter anthology and a prolific author in his own right, but also a talented composer and musician. He performed The Abyss Gazes Back for us a couple of years ago on the show, which is kind of a tribute song inspired by the series. Well, Thom has put together another song, this time with lyrics written by me, that I styled after the poetry of Robert E. Howard. Thom really does have a way of bringing words and music to life, and so I'll trust you'll enjoy this as much as I do. Sharing it with you for the first time, with music composed and performed by Thom Brannan, here's the Song of the Woodsman. There are parts of that that give me chills, the credit for which belongs squarely to Thom and for Robert E. Howard, who, as I said earlier, I emulated when I wrote the lyrics, because his poetry has always just been so potent to me. A Song of the Woodsman. It's available to download on Thom's Zartember page at bandcamp.com, which is a musical distribution site where artists like Thom can showcase their music. Show them your support, won't you? Here's the URL. He's got some other great songs on there you might want to check out as well, including The Abyss Gazes Back. So thanks so much for that, Thom. Well, after a brief sabbatical, Dr. T. Broussard is back with us, and we're glad to have him back. If you'll remember, he's been talking about shape-shifting and its various cultural traditions. We started with the leopard men of Africa and then moved on to the Nordic berserkers and slaughter wolves. Tonight, Doc will cover one of the most recognized, yet probably the least understood of shape-shifting traditions. I'm talking about the Native American skinwalker. Here's Doc Talk Shop.
Welcome to Doc Talk Shop as part of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Tonight I will be discussing the Native American skinwalker, primarily of the Navajo or Dene variety. Please note that while I am aware of the Native American terminology for many of the things that we'll be discussing, out of respect for the culture and for simplicity's sake, I will mainly be using the word skinwalker because I don't want to mutilate their language. The sources of this talk stem primarily from my experiences in the Native American community in the Southwest United States. And the story I'll be relating tonight comes from a shamanic practitioner I will refer to as Bear of the Dawns. A skinwalker in today's parlance of pop culture is usually thought of as a Native American equivalent to the European werewolf, but that's not necessarily an accurate portrayal. The skinwalker's ability to shapeshift is not unlike that of the medicine man or shaman, or even that of the hunting parties and warrior parties common in Native American culture. The power or gift of shapeshifting is normal to them. What makes the skinwalker different is that he does not get it through the holy processes of his tribe. He gets it by breaking taboos, and he uses shapeshifting and other abilities to do harm and to control others, breaking taboos, tearing down the culture in the process of what he's doing. It is the other things that the skinwalker does, besides shapeshifting, that make the skinwalker such a horrible thing to the Navajo and other Native American peoples. Now, much like secret societies like the leopard people or Abakwa of southern West Africa and other such sects, the skinwalker is as much a tradition or a sect. So when you think of a skinwalker, they give a Native American equivalent to a coven of European witches in the older sense of the term witch, and someone that is going outside the society, that has acquired powers that the society now frowns upon. And all that being said, I will now relate the story given to me as to the origin of the first skinwalker. Many moons, many eons ago actually, it was a member of the tribe that was lazy, didn't want to work, wasn't very helpful to his family, really wasn't motivated to do much. He found this herb that the holy people didn't use that made him very high, and that he felt put him in contact with the spirit world. And most of the time, he spent smoking his herb and traveling through the spirit world, he thought. In one of these unsanctioned spiritual journeys, he comes across the god Coyote. And unusually, this guy, he preys on Coyote, gave him all kind of compliments, admired him. How he was able to find food in lean time, so he always had a coat, so he was always warm. He was able to be independent. And even asked Coyote, what can I do to be more like you? Coyote tells him, you wouldn't want to be like me, nobody likes me. They throw pollen on my tracks and they say prayers to keep me away, and but the guy persisted. He said, look, I'll do anything. So Coyote gives him a series of tests. Says, okay, you want to be like me? Hang out with the dead. Because I have to eat the dead off, but I have to be a scavenger. So the guy goes home, digs up a body, brings it home, lays down with it, the whole deal. Even eats a bite of it. So he said, wow, I'm impressed. When they meet up again, says, my only friends are the creatures of the night that your people hate. So you have to go and make friends with them. They have to become your allies. To Coyote's amazement, guy goes and does it. He makes friends with the owl. He makes friends with the rattlesnake. All the things that, the tribe sees as bad omens. This guy makes his friends. He even takes rattlesnake home and tames it as a pet. So, again, Coyote's impressed. This guy wants to be so much like him that he actually goes out and skins a coyote, makes himself a pelt to wear so we can look more like Coyote. At this point, Coyote's really impressed. This guy really admires him. Coyote's begun to buy what this guy's selling and says, okay, it's time for your last test. You do this, you'll be like me for real, in ways no other man has ever been like me. So, he says, my family, they don't mean much to me. I'm on my own. I'm always on my own. So I want you to go, and I want you to kill a member of your family. And this shocked the guy, because to do this, there was no going back. He would no longer be a part of the tribe. And deep down in his heart, he wanted to reconcile with his family, especially his brother. But he also really wanted to be like Cody. So after some deliberation, the guy makes the choice, I'm going to follow this track all the way through. So Coyote gives him the power to transform in this coyote shape one time. And the guy uses it. He goes and he takes the arm and he burns it. He takes the ashes back to Coyote. Coyote's really impressed. He smells the bag, says, you've done it. So you've made the pact. I will now give you the power. He will have all the powers of Coyote in a lesser degree. He'll be able to cast spells, change shape, all the things Coyote can do. So Coyote names him Skinwalker. He gives the man his own heart. He replaces the guy's blood with lightning. And so that is the traditional story, paraphrased by me, of how the first Skinwalker was created. I should note that the term skinwalking refers to shapeshifting, but also to things like possession and controlling of others. The interesting thing about that is you find the same word, translated of course, in Norse terminology. And this has the aspect of bringing out the fact that in very ancient times there was some interaction between Native Americans and Vikings, and this leads to the theory that maybe some practices of the Skinwalker were learned by observing Norse Ulfidar or wolf warriors in the distant past, and the proof, some gift for this, is the fact that part of being a Skinwalker is that you have to make yourself look very pale. They will use ash from sacred fire to make themselves look very white. Some people assume that this has to do with trying to look like the dead, but the dead in Navajo symbology are usually shown as black, not white. They're shown as shadow figures. So what does this paleness refer to? Some say that it's sickness and that skinwalkers are embodiments of sickness and they spread sickness and so they make themselves look sick. But this possible connection to the Vikings gives the whitening of one's skin in ritual a slightly different term, and it goes to the whole thing of stepping outside the tribe, becoming of another world in order to have this power. Now, my own researches have shown me that this idea is tempting, it's interesting, but it may be a case of correlation without causation. In any case, the fact that you can find the idea of skinwalking in both Native American and European cultures goes back to the idea of spiritual technology having a basis in truth in an objective sense that transcends culture as well as time and space. I want to reiterate that skinwalkers as a practice, skinwalking, involves things like bone weaponry, bone areas, things like that, things that a Navajo warrior would never use as a weapon. These are taboo things. And in that respect, they represent a kind of spiritual assassin. These people, and make no mistake that according to many Navajo sources, they still exist in practice. These people were hitmen for the tribes. These people were blackmailers and other kinds of maniplators that they built up power that the power structure of the tribe did not officially recognize, but were aware of. Now, I say all that to say this. When people today think of a skinwalker, like I said, they think of a Native American werewolf or possibly a Native American vampire, if they know a little bit more than the average bear. But either of those choices of parallel is incomplete, because these guys could command all of the night as long as they stayed within their twisted version of their path. As long as they held to their own ways and built up their power, they could do all sorts of things. And that's why they are feared. I mean, Native Americans don't even like to say the Native American word that means skinwalker. They feel like to use that word could bring the attention of a skinwalker, and nobody wanted that. And as a side note, interestingly, in today's more open world, there are people that want to repaint the skinwalker in a positive light. They want to say that, oh, it's all in how you use the power. Well, that may be from a European standpoint of magic and witchcraft, but according to my sources in the Native American community, a skinwalker is bad news, period. The nature of his path and the powers he uses inevitably leads to his own destruction as well as that of the tribe. They are seen as a pestilence, and that not more than just eating a few people or eating livestock in animal form. They're able to switch bodies with people and wreak havoc, break up relationships. And it's the breaking up of community, the disruption of the weave of life, the sacred hoop, if you will, that makes skinwalkers a horror. They represent the outsider to the tribal community. They are other than the people. The actual word that the Navajo use for themselves simply means the people. They are the people. And to be a skinwalker is to be someone who chooses to be outside the people, chooses to be other than the people, which breaks the totality of the tribe. And in my opinion, it demonstrates some of the fractures in the tribal system. It shows the power of independence over the collective, the individual over the collective. And if you're in a tribal setting, that is a very dangerous idea. Now, in many movies today, you will find the skinwalker linked up with the idea of the rougarou in Cajun culture. And this is because one of the Algonquin words for their version of a skinwalker phonetically is very similar to the French loup-garou. And so, You have, again, a mingling of ideas. You also have the Champé in Choctaw culture in the southeastern United States, which Cajuns being in Louisiana would have become familiar with, which again is very similar to their idea of a loop guru, feeding into this idea of a connection between the two. In any respect, in any native culture, the skinwalker is a very dangerous person. It's a very dangerous idea. Some sources have thought that the skinwalker represents a tribal understanding of psychopathy or sociopathy because of the kinds of crimes that the skinwalker is attributed. You know, he's a killer, he's a breaker up of families, all that good stuff. Now, again, I want to emphasize that shapeshifting is common to the shaman, is common to the warrior, and is common to the hunter in native culture. It is the perverse way in which the skinwalker does it that makes the skinwalker unusual, whereas the shaman takes the form of a wolf or a bear, what have you. The skinwalker takes the form as well, but it will have the form of a wolf but the eyes of a cat, or the shape of a cat and the eyes of a snake. It will somehow be incomplete, a distortion, and to the shamans, that represents the twisted or distorted nature of the skinwalker's spirit. And it is the unnaturalness of the skinwalker that makes animals like dogs and cats aware of them. Also, it's said that whether in human or animal form, the skinwalker's eyes will reflect light like an animal's would. So that's a good way to detect them. Also, a good way to make a skinwalker go away or to break a skinwalker's spell is to find his tracks the same way you would find coyote's tracks and throw pollen from corn on them or say prayers over them, and that way drive the skinwalker away. Or if you're able to catch the skinwalker in the act, force the skinwalker to blink by putting fire in his eyes or light in his eyes, something to make him blink. Make him close his eyes, because it's said that the skinwalker projects his power through his eyes. Now, lastly, one of the reasons why skinwalkers are called such is because they're known to walk in other skins. That means they will take a victim, they will slash their feet and enter their body through the feet and take over the body. They will possess a body. They will take cuttings from people and in that way control people. So one of the ways of defeating a skinwalker is to take away their fetishes and destroy them. And on that note, I will say good night, and I want to thank you all for tuning in, and be careful if you run into a person that has very overly shiny eyes. Good night.
Man, that was good. I think we'd all do well to take some notes when Doc is talking, don't you? I mean, particularly if you have any interest in the subject and intend to write about it. That's valuable stuff. And now, as the doctor pointed out, these guys, the skinwalkers, they're bad news. No matter how you try to whitewash them in Hollywood or, society's modern interpretations. Read the Winter Fox journals, you know that there is a Navajo skinwalker character in them. A character that Michael calls Painted Face because upon his transformation, he kind of has this white mask type pattern over his eyes. And I can assure you we've not seen the last of him either. And while we're on the subject of the Winter Fox journals, here's a quick update for you. I'm currently working on Chapter 8. The Great War is raging. Michael and a certain distinctive ally have found themselves behind enemy lines and in the lair of a blood eater. That's right. Michael comes face to face, gets up and close and personal with a vampire while he's on the trail of a werewolf risen from the grave. And all the while, the Battle of the Somme looms like impending doom. I think you're going to like it when it's done. And that's just about our show for you. I hope you found it entertaining and informative. And if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Come find me online at www.werewolfhunter.com. You can drop me a line at brian@werewolfhunter.com. You can also find me on Facebook. So until next month, let me bid you happy hunting and mind the moon.